Thanks so much for joining our webinar this afternoon. We hope you're in a cool environment as things are heating up around the country these days in the dog days of summer. Really happy to have a fantastic and really experienced guest today. I'll make introductions in a moment, but just wanted to clear up a couple of housekeeping items. To encourage an active dialogue with this webinar, we encourage you to use the chat function. We will not be able to do audio dialogue, but we will be very happy to answer your questions through chat. So please do that. We've got a moderator who will be monitoring that and asking us questions as things come in. We'll also have an opportunity at the end of the session in about 30 minutes to have a general Q&A as well. So please ask questions as conversation continues and that spurs your thinking. That's what we're here for, is to educate. So thanks again for joining. So without further ado, I'll introduce our guest today, who's Charles Internicola. Charles has been advising franchisors and franchisees for over 25 years. He is the founder of Internicola Law Firm, which is really one of the, if not the most highly regarded franchise law firms in the country. And he's written numerous publications, started many different corporations. He's a serial entrepreneur. And we're just really fortunate to have him with us today. From a transparency standpoint, Charles works very closely with Valenta as well as one of our head sources of legal counsel. So we're not only a believer in what he does, we're also a customer of his law firm as well. So Charles, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Alan, thank you so much. I appreciate the intro, and more importantly, spending the time together today.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks. So over the next 30 minutes, hopefully we'll cover some key topics that people are thinking about. But maybe I thought I'd just throw a softball down the middle of the plate for you and just kind of tee it off with really, in today's environment, there's a lot of ways to start a business or to expand your business. And as you're thinking about business owners looking to build their businesses and scale them, that's when your phone rings and you get a lot of phone calls around, how can you help me potentially think about franchising my business? Can maybe you share what some of those conversations sound like and what some of the advantages are that business owners should be thinking about if they're considering franchising?
Yeah, so it's a great question because we get these calls, right? And so we'll either speak with a founder or a team member. They'll express, hey, things have been good. We've grown. We've made some mistakes. We've learned along the way. We've built up some pretty good systems. And now we're looking for the next stage of growth, right? And so maybe they have one location, maybe they have 5 locations, depending on the industry. They're running into scalability issues. So if it's a brick and mortar, labor intensive type business, it's, hey, I could sell and keep, our sales will keep growing, but I don't have the resources to keep hiring managers and overseeing operations. Or they want to expand geographically, or they don't want to keep investing fresh capital into new locations. So they have a winning formula. They know it's working. And now they want to scale. And so it comes down to the traditional options, organic expansion versus franchised expansion, right? And there the advantages are, hey, if I franchise, we're going to recruit franchisees. They're going to bring in capital. Hopefully, if we pick the right franchisees, they're going to be committed to their new business, their new location. So now we have capital plus management, and we expand geographic reach. So there's definitely advantages there. And that's usually the dialogue going on in the minds of our clients of, how do we build that scale? And then, really for them, once you start franchising and your franchise system grows, you're creating a whole new organization, right? You're looking out for the brand, you're creating team members to support franchisees, open franchisees, and the hope long-term is to create economies of scale and real value for your team and for your franchisees.
Awesome. Thanks, Charles. Where do you find in your experience the more successful franchises are focusing to help their franchisees accelerate their businesses? What do they focus on to really get kickstarted?
Well, I think a mistake some inexperienced franchisors may make is they sell a franchise, they put together their operations manual and their requirements, and they just assume that the franchisee will follow them. I think a good franchisor, I think the magic of franchising is when the franchisor takes a role that it's not only out there looking at supply chain, economies of scale, brand protection, sort of marketing, positioning, but I think the real secret of a good franchisor and successful franchise system is sort of the mentorship, where a franchisor takes the role of a mentor for the franchisee and really helps them implement strategic planning processes, KPIs, whether it's recurring calls to go over franchisee marketing results, evaluating, what's worked for their system, where the ROI is, and then coaching them along the way on KPIs, giving them visibility to understand, where they are today, where they should be, where other franchisees are, right? So if you have those collective metrics and benchmarks, that's when you create that winning formula.
Yeah, I love that insight, and that's really been the Valenta model as well. We're a relatively young franchise in North America, but intentionally supportive of the franchisees by having a layer of area development, as really a tier of helping franchisees understand their business and in parallel pathways to coaching, engaging, and helping them build their brand as well. So that's really good insight. So, when we get into, the how these things work scenario, there's attorneys that represent franchisors for the most part. There's also franchise attorneys who represent the franchisees. And there's this big thing called an FDD. It's a big, long legal document that is fairly intimidating if no one has seen one before. Maybe just describe the process and how to eliminate the fear factor for a potential franchisee when they're considering the legal side of things.
Wow. Yeah. So it's a good question. And so for any prospective franchisee out there, right, that FDD, franchise disclosure document, you need to understand where it comes from, which is at the federal and state level. The government or the Federal Trade Commission's taken the viewpoint of, hey, to protect a franchise buyer, we're going to require that the franchisor disclose to you a pre-sales disclosure document, and that's the FDD, right? And it includes a ton of information: who the franchisor is, litigation history, bankruptcy history, initial fees you're going to be paying, estimated startup expenses, financial data. So it's designed to protect franchisees. However, like all good things, or like all things that the government intends to do, sometimes you get the reverse effect, which is sometimes franchisees view it as a pro forma document. They ignore it completely. Sometimes, on the other hand, they'll go to a lawyer that is really looking to cover himself or herself, and is just going to raise a number of issues that may not be realistic, right? And all these attorney comments. And so you really need a balance point. If I'm a franchisee, a couple of things. The FDD is important to me. I would work with a franchise lawyer who's experienced in dealing with these documents, and also where he or she is realistic, understands business goals, and understands, the individual goals of the franchisee. And then from there, there's some important things in the FDD, like estimated startup expenses, fee structures. What am I going to be paying as royalties and ongoing fees? What does operational history of the franchisor look like? And if the franchisor includes financial data about performance, those are going to be some key metrics. And then I think for every franchisee, the most important thing you could do is contact existing franchisees and check on, do they validate and are they happy? Meaning, if you ask an existing franchisee, would you do it all over again? I think that's a very important question.
Yeah, all great points. Thanks, Charles. Very much appreciated that. Maybe shifting gears a little bit, can we perhaps talk about the difference in franchises, right? Because you represent, and have represented over 150 brands. And I'm guessing that a lot of the brands started out as B2C brands, the more traditional things that most people would think about in food services. Maybe I'm off on that one. But how has that dynamic shifted? And, how do you feel the mix or see the mix coming in terms of B2B and B2C franchises today?
So I don't even know if I would differentiate between B2B and B2C. I think an important differentiator becomes franchise businesses that require a retail location, sort of a brick and mortar franchise versus a service-based franchise or home-based business, right? Because they're very different models. Brick and mortar, you're going to traditionally, whether it's a restaurant or it's a retail store, you're going to traditionally have higher startup expenses. You're going to have other very significant legal relationships, most important being your lease and your relationship with your landlord. And then on the other end, you have home service-based businesses that are B2C, right? But they're home-based. They're not brick and mortar. You're tapping into a system in terms of marketing, support, and service providing. And in many ways, that could be the same for a B2C, right? Where if you take something like Valenta or, a service type brand where you don't have that sort of high startup cost, you're relying on the internal IQ of the franchisee to go out, roll out services. And so for me, I look at it more in terms of, I try to differentiate between franchises that have brick and mortar retail locations versus home-based, and also based on estimated startup expenses, right? You could be opening up a restaurant, it's over $1 million, right? So I sort of look at franchise opportunities in terms of the investment level of the category. If it's me and I'm a prospective franchisee, if I have a lower startup cost, good opportunity for ROI, well, if that's in a B2B home-based business or B2C, I'm not sure I'm going to care that much. I'm going to look more for where I can leverage my time and income.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because, we've lived through very challenging and different times. We've learned a lot over the last 18 months, going through pandemics and all sorts of, life challenges. And, I think people are really thinking about where to work from, and can I work from anywhere, and how do I want to return to work? Is it a hybrid? Is it a permanent solution? And there's some brands that's their business, and there's a lot of question marks around that still today. What's your beat on that? I mean, how has COVID affected this business? And do you see trends towards people wanting to be more flexible in where they're working versus having, fixed overhead that they're not? It looks like the return from COVID is imminent, thankfully, due to great vaccinations. But there's still a little bit of question around that.
Well, I've had many conversations, and when you speak to, when you look at history, right, in preparation, we sort of over-indexed to the last event. So pre-COVID, we're over-indexing to events that turned out weren't pandemics, and we weren't prepared. So I know I'm not smart enough to know what will happen in the future. But I agree with your point. COVID and our response to the pandemic has accelerated our society, I think, in a direction we were going in no matter what, but probably has accelerated the future by 10 to 15 years. And with that comes the reality of, how much time is being wasted in, commuting to big cities and even myself, whereas in the past, I would have never even considered team members, hiring them out of state. And, now it's just common. So I think there's been a big acceleration. There's definitely a preference against the, there's a preference to the lower startup cost service-based businesses, whether B2B or B2C. I think that's good. I don't know it's something I believe in. I think it's a trend that was going to happen no matter what, right? I always worry about the surprises I don't, can't anticipate. And certainly I think there will be good opportunities in real estate and, retail, because I think rent factors are coming down and things like that. But right now, service-based and home-based is super strong, and for good reason.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in real estate value as people are moving out of the cities and into places where they can have their own home-based business and need more room to spread out, because I don't know how working families do it, with kids in the house and trying to manage work schedules, but God bless, that's got to be a challenge for sure. So Charles, just a curveball for you. What's the best business advice that somebody's given you in your career that you've learned to follow? Sorry to put you on the spot. It's a tough one.
By far the best business advice is, I'm not sure I followed it, or if I did, it was later on in life. It's to learn from other people, right? Ask people that have, that you respect, how they built their businesses and what they find to be valuable. And then to take their answer very serious and dive into it. So it's, it's like anything else. It's your business, and it's a function of who you network with, the advice you take, and the books you read. So the best business advice is ask questions to people you respect and read books, right? I mean, even simple things, whether, from a business perspective, a book like Traction and the EOS system, I think's transformed my business. On the marketing end, books like Story Brand, are very powerful things. So I think the advice is always be in education and learning mode. And I think you win that way.
Yeah, I love that. I think when you stop learning, you stop growing and your world becomes very small. That's the old analogy of 2 ears, 1 mouth, I guess, as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Charles, one of the things that's kind of going on and off monitor behind you is Franex. So do you maybe want to introduce the people on it's not up there currently, but
yeah. So what it's interesting from a business, and so I'm not making this about our firm, right? We are a franchise-only law firm. We support franchisors, and as we went through our strategic planning process, every business goes through what's unique about their business, right? Some businesses, when you speak with them, like, well, there's nothing really different from the competition. And for anyone listening, there should be something unique about every business. One of our value propositions is to provide our clients with resources to grow and strategies to win. And in particular, in this case, at franchising, we took that to heart as a team. And so, we've sought out to build resources for our clients, communities, master classes, networking, all value added that I think not only differentiate us, but help us accomplish our mission for our clients. So Franex is that community we built. And if anyone's listening, they like to go, if you're on Facebook, if you look up Franchise Growth Mastermind Community, that's our Franex community on Facebook, our website, franexlaunch.com. That'll be going live in a couple of weeks. But it's our knowledge-based platform for our clients. Webinars, learning platforms, guides, networking. And so that's how that came about.
Yeah, that's great. It's amazing and incredibly helpful to have trusted resources that you can learn from. And people are, it's interesting how people are learning from the internet and, who they believe and who they don't believe. And, I think the old adage is you understand if you trust somebody in the first 5 seconds of conversation. And I think the same thing is even more true on the internet, right? It's based on what you see and how you feel about it. So it's great to have a great reference to a trusted resource. So just kind of thinking about this, I mean, I walked in a new franchisee shoes not that long ago, and some advice that I got from somebody. I had a great mentor and coach to help me through this process and understanding and wrapping my head around how to think about things. So I feel very fortunate for that. I also received advice from somebody who's told me that, every day you wait is a day you're not building your business. So how do you balance that, right? So how do you say, hey, I really want to learn about this. I want to make a life choice, right? That gives me the lifestyle that I want to have. A lot of people want to break away from maybe the corporate world, or they're burned out, or they just want to make their own choices and their own decisions, but also understanding, hey, this is something, if I work really hard at it, it can give me great joy. What's your advice on when to know that you validated things enough to just kind of go?
It's a great question. And I've been running my own business for a really long time, right? So, for me, I think most important is a personal aspect of where people are in their life. And really to take accountability and understand that, what I find becomes problem is, the logic where someone says, well, when this happens, I will do that, or I can't do this because of that, right? So I think it's important just to set down that goal, decide where you want to be. What does your 5 years look like for you? And if where you are now in whatever employment doesn't get you there, the good news is there's success all over. So go out, educate yourself. The advice I gave earlier, go reach out to other people, ask questions, see what they're doing. I think the more you educate yourself, the more confident you become. And then, at a certain point, you just do it, but you need that knowledge, and I'm not saying to over analyze it, but what I am saying is to immerse yourself. I think too many people, they get that urge, they're ready to go, and then life hits them. They go to a family event over the weekend, they start getting distracted on their thoughts, and then it leaves them, and then maybe they reevaluate 3 months later, but there's another reason for certain things. I really think you need to look at it from a 5-year perspective. And once you look at that 5 years, I actually think it creates more urgency to act. And the most important thing is that we all know life is short, right? So if you're not happy, that's a pain point, right? And you should act on it.
Yeah, and it's so hard because life's so busy, right? You just kind of get on a pathway, right? You're trying to, control the hours of the day and the pressures that are coming down on you to get the work accomplished in those business hours. People don't stop to pause and think about, hey, am I happy? Am I achieving my life goals? What's my 5-year plan? And even more so, to your point earlier, if they're not educating themselves on what their options are, they're going to feel much differently than they would if they say, hey, I've got 5 great options. It's a matter of which one of those pathways is going to make me the happiest. That's a totally different mindset versus, hey, I'm kind of stuck here. I don't know what my chances are, my options are. I'm just going to keep chugging away, and grind it out, right? But I guess my advice personally would be, it doesn't have to be that way. Pause, take a step back, reflect, meet some people, get some options, and it's always nice to be also invited to something, right? When you haven't interviewed or you haven't thought about different things, it's always nice to be welcomed into other families, because that makes us feel good as well.
Yeah, no, it's being unhappy is an important pain point, and you have to act on it. And there's just, look, you can make a bad decision, right? But there's just so many opportunities out there. And there's so many opportunities to be happy, right? And it's not incompatible to be happy, proud of what you're doing, and to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. So great. So I think I saw one question pop up in the chat window, and it was to all panelists. And then the question is, do you recommend waiting for some period of time or reaching a financial trigger after launching your first franchise before investing in a second franchise, be it second location, a complementary adjacent franchise, or a totally independent franchise? So Charles, I think that's maybe more directed towards you.
Right. And the way I understand it is from a franchisee perspective of, multi-unit franchise ownership, right? And so what I could share is that if you want to build wealth, more often than not, it happens through multiple multi-unit, multi-territory ownership as a franchisee. And so we see many successful franchisees open their first location, have done well, and just keep replicating new locations or new service territories. We also see franchisees when they're going into their first one, over purchase development rights and maybe undercapitalize themselves. So I think the answer is that get that first location open, get to economic viability, meaning cash flow that's needed to support your family. Once you've done that and you have that cash flow and you have that model down that you believe in it, yeah, I would hit, copy and paste as many times as I can on replicating that model. If it means going with a different system, that could have value. I worry about the inefficiency of going from different types of businesses. I'm a big fan of building repeatable, redundant systems, but for sure, multi-unit, multi-territory franchise ownership, it's definitely a wealth building opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that's what a lot of people are thinking about when they're getting into franchising. I want to build wealth, right? I want to think about, 5 years, 10 years down the road, is there a legacy for my family? Do my kids want to take on this business? I mean, what's the opportunity, that this represents to me? I'll also say that there are models like our model of Valenta. We have multiple franchise models, but there's we don't prohibit our franchisees from being operators and conducting business anywhere globally. We have very strict rules in place so that we don't encroach on each other's territories or don't take on the same customers. So we protect our franchisees that way. But at the same time, if you've been in a business for 20 years and you've got great relationships across the country or further, then go for it, right? Work your vertical market, work your relationships, and you can scale your business without having to necessarily have multiple franchises. But if you do that, you're probably going to want to bring on additional staff, right? Because there's only so many hours in the day that you can be engaged with customers and not have to worry about either lead generation or back office function.
Right. No, I mean, it's an important point. It's all about the scalability.
Yep, for sure. Awesome. So being in your role, another question, being in your role as you are, Charles, and all the experience you have, what kind of steps do you take at the beginning when buying a franchise, or what should you be thinking about?
So it's a good question. If I'm buying a franchise, I'm evaluating the startup cost, right? Because that's important for me. Can I afford it? What type of capital is needed? I'm also evaluating the economic model. Once I open, how much reserve capital do I need to make sure I keep the lights on and the business operating? Once I find franchises that meet my investment criteria, then I'm going to evaluate the business model itself, right? What type of industry is it? Is it something I could see myself thriving in and enjoying? At the same time, I'd be looking at potential unit economics, right? What are the unit economics of the business itself? So I would be evaluating those factors very significantly. Then for me, equally important would be the management team. These are basic, they're going to be sort of my partners. What are their core values? What is their focus? What is the greater good we serve or they serve, whether it's for end user customers or for franchisees, right? And to that extent, how satisfied the franchisees are. So that would be at least the framework I would evaluate, from startup cost, reserve capital, unit economics, financial economics, management team and management team values, and franchisee validation. So I would be exploring all of those items.
I think it's great advice, Charles. And I think it's a little bit different in terms of management team because you are your own business and you don't feel that necessary pressure coming down from above. However, we all know that some of the best years in our careers were with great leadership teams, right? Just people that you align with ideologically, and people especially that you're aligned with financially as well. If there's a disconnect between the leadership team and the franchise owners, that's a problem. And I've seen that in business where, maybe some are focused on bottom line and some are focused on top line, and there can be a big disconnect on investment strategies, from that perspective. I think that what we also do at Valenta, Charles, is we really want to, when we're talking to franchisees, we encourage them. We're pretty flat and smaller organization. They're only one or two steps away from the co-founders of the company, and we really encourage them to seek that conversation and that knowledge and build that relationship before they even join the company, because it's important, right? It's important to know, hey, where is this business going to go in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years? What are your goals as a business owner who's creating and supporting this business for me? But we also build out business strategies. What's your strategy? What should you have in reserve to build your business for the first year, so that you can go to bed at night and not worry about cash burn, while you're building your business, and you can be focused on the important things that it takes to build that business every day.
Yeah, with startup franchisors or the emerging, while there's some risk, there's also opportunity. And so if you align with management team, that's really important.
Yep. Great. Another question, Charles, any groups in particular in LinkedIn that you would join or recommend a new franchisee joining?
So I'm really bad that I'm sure there are groups on LinkedIn. I'm not that familiar. But if you are listening, we also have franchisee members in our Facebook community. So feel free to join. If you look up on Facebook, Franchise Growth Mastermind, we have franchisee members in there too. So you'll get to see what franchisors are talking about, brokers are talking about, franchise professionals. We have franchisees asking questions. And we do have guest speakers, so feel free to join that. Just note there'll be some questions you could mention this webinar. And I apologize, I don't know the LinkedIn groups, but feel free to join Franchise Growth Mastermind.
Great. I also don't have a lot of referral on that piece, but I know that even with the broker groups, there's a wealth of information in their communities, and there's a lot of content on YouTube. I mean, check out webinars, check out information, and just learn from that piece and kind of choose who your trusted resource is, because you never know sometimes who's hidden in a chat and what their agendas are sometimes. So it's kind of hard to see around the corner, but it's a great question. And sorry, we couldn't provide a little bit more insight on that piece. Okay. Amanda, is there anything else? Oh, looks like we did another one. So for a non-brick and mortar franchise, what are the best lead generation tools you'd recommend for a brand new franchise?
So I think it comes from really the industry you're in and the franchisor, right? So lead gen is critical. And you're working with a franchisor that's been through this pathway. So really depends. I mean, if you're a home service-based business and you're doing sort of home repairs or improvements and you're administratively operating from home, well, it's going to be, whatever online resources, Google and those things. B2B may be very different, right? Different solicitations and processes. So it's really going to depend on the business and the franchise system. But the good point there is when you're evaluating those franchisors, I'd be asking about lead gen and marketing.
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's one of the key things that we want to focus our franchise candidates to as well, is connecting them with relevant links to our marketing team. We invest a lot on that side because that's an important part of building their business. And I would recommend a few things. One, if you're experienced in business, you've got a network built. So tap that network and work your vertical market that you're a subject matter expert on. You're going to get off to a great start from the people that you've built relationships with. LinkedIn can be a very, very valuable tool, running conversational ad campaigns and other campaigns there to connect with like-minded people. But there's a lot of overarching things like Google Ads, other things that will drive interest and awareness to your brand and to your local marketplaces. Another thing that we do is we also build a lot of marketing resources for our owners in terms of personalized strategies, personalized landing pages, so that all of your outbound marketing gets back to you as a business owner and not back to the global website. So you're not essentially advertising for everybody, you're advertising for you. So lots of things to think about. And I would say, if you're considering this, then just ask a lot of questions. If these things pop up, ask questions, ask to connect with the people that you'll be working with to help you build these strategies and execute on them, because it's important to know that, because if you don't have leads, then you're not going to be able to convert them. All right, so maybe we'll take one more. We're over our time limit here, but we'll take maybe one more last question here. So as I said, piggybacking off of that question, what kind of digital marketing / awareness do you use, Charles? That's a good question.
So for myself so I'll generalize it. I think the key for good marketing starts before you start spending any dollars or promoting any content. I'm a big advocate of really defining your brand positioning, your value proposition. So many people waste time and money marketing, and they don't get the results that they expected. It's really not the marketing medium. It's just their positioning is not clarified, right? So what are those 3 uniques of your business? What is that unique selling proposition? Where does your brand fall? And then most important, how do you help solve the problem of your customers, transform their life? When you have that clear, I think then you start developing your digital assets. Alan, like you mentioned wisely, your landing page, right? Different landing pages that you A/B test. And then from there, I think it's a host of different things. It's organic SEO, so that's producing content. It's paid digital. I'm not a big fan of Google AdWords because I think many people are not ready for it, but if you are, there's a place for that. I think targeted ads on LinkedIn and Facebook and the social media channels, they in many ways are a revolution and an opportunity for the small guy to win. So for me, it's all of the above digital strategy. And then you add in some networking and whatnot, but so many brands make the wrong decision because they don't put in the fundamental work up front, which is what makes us unique, what problems are we solving, and what value can we deliver? And then it ends up in marketing messages that sound like everyone else, or if you're lucky enough to get a click, they're not coming to a compelling landing page for a conversion. So for me, it's all of the above, but there's a lot of legwork to do before you get there.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, Charles. And I'll just, from our end, that's one of our strengths as service is digital marketing. We've got an end-to-end marketing solution for that. And so both for the global community as well as the North American community, it's one of our rapidly growing areas. So we do a lot for our franchisees, and we build their brand, we build their content, we build their strategies, we build their landing pages and build their go-to-market strategies. It's such an important piece, especially to get going. But I will say, with all that said, not everything's going to work, right? You need to test things, and A/B testing or whatever it is, find out what's working well for you, find out what's generating the right quality of leads, not always just quantity, right? What the right quality of leads, and continue to reinvest in that channel, and don't be afraid to get stuck in one that's not producing. You don't have to pick the losers if they're not winning. Just stay with the winners, but you need to spend and figure that out before you can double down on it.
That's good advice, Alan.
Well, great. So I think that's all the questions that were in the queue. Charles, that time flew by. It was really, it's really nice to connect with you, and wanted to say on behalf of Valenta and the leadership team, we really appreciate you sharing your time with us. You've been a great partner, and hopefully you provided some really great insights for people thinking about either building their brands or joining the franchise community in general. So thanks so much.
Alan, I appreciate it. Thank you.